yeah, rock and roll.
Wow. It has been such a long time. Yes, we're planning. It's been such a long time since we had the last episode of Tea Time. It's been since last year. But I'm really far from the mic. I'm so excited, Camasonian viewers and listeners, to be back with you again for another episode of Tea Time. I have the one and only. Why don't you introduce yourself for the camera?
Hello, everybody. I'm Mr. Sam Greene. I teach English and history here at Camas High School. And, of course, I teach the history of rock and roll, which you can take for half of a fine art credit at some point in your Camas High School career. Hello.
Excellent. Thank you very much for being with me today. And today
My
we're
pleasure.
drinking some wonderful. I actually don't know how wonderful it is because I haven't tasted it yet. But we're drinking some green tea, of course. I'm going to take my first sip. Oh, wow. That is divine.
Very nice.
Before we begin, I'm just kind of curious, what kind of got you into teaching?
Well, I come from a long line of educators. My mom was a high school English teacher in Vancouver. My dad taught 6th grade, and then he was an elementary school principal. And so I kind of knew that as a template for how to make a living and have lots of time with your family. So I just generally like being around people and being a part of their learning and their whole kind of realization of new knowledge and getting better at things. And so that's what kind of drew me to it. The template my parents had given me and just that whole thing about hanging out with people and seeing the light bulbs come on.
Okay.
Yeah.
And this is critical to your history of rock and roll class that you mentioned. And so it seems like two of your main interests are history and music. And so how do you see the relationship? What do you think of as like the relationship between those and how connected those are?
Well, I see them very closely connected, obviously. One of the ways we approach the history of rock class and whenever possible in a regular history class is that music is kind of like a reflection of the times. It's some of the context, and in some cases it spurs the actual events themselves. But it's cliched, perhaps, but it's a soundtrack to the times, really. It's a touch point for people. They know where they were, what was going on when they hear a certain song, and they're able to place themselves in that moment in time in history. And so that's why I think it's so special and important to bring that into the classroom.
We're sitting beneath this beautiful guitar right here, and I'm kind of curious with your interest in music. Have you ever dabbled in guitar or any other instrument?
As a matter of fact, I have, Suki.
Is that so?
I started playing piano way back when I was 6 or 7 years old. My teacher was kind of mean, and so I stepped away from it for several years. In the meantime, when I was about 12 years old, I picked up the guitar. One of my friends was learning how to play, and I thought it would be really cool. So I took some lessons at Beacock Music, and that was the beginning of a journey about 43 years ago of me playing the guitar. I played guitar and bass in several bands in the area too, just, cheesy local pub bar bands. One of my favorites from high school was our band Captain Volcano and the Harmonic Tremors. We've played a bunch of gigs in high school, and we've played at our 10-year reunion, our 20-year reunion, our 30-year reunion, our 35th year reunion. And we had to actually retire the band because one of the members passed away. But anyway. Mr. Morgan and I have played in a couple of bands. Mr. Morgan, CHS English teacher, he's a master of many instruments. He plays guitar, he plays a little trumpet, he plays the keyboards, he can slap the bass.
Stevie Wonder over there.
Yeah, totally. So I've had a lot of fun with Mr. Morgan in various bands, and we've done some solo gigs together in the CHS library at the CHS Talent Show. I've also been a member of the district band Spam Finger, most recently out of Skyridge and Liberty. I think word on the street is that we're playing this year's talent show, so be prepared for that.
That's the tea.
That is the tea. Spilt.
Oh, just be careful. It is pretty hot. Before we get into the albums, you mentioned something earlier when we were exchanging them about a little story you had with Mr.
Oh,
Van
yeah.
Halen.
So I had a
Spill the tea
chance.
on that?
Yeah, I'll spill the tea for sure. I met Eddie Van Halen back in October of 1986. One of my buddies in high school, his dad was the chief of security at the Memorial Coliseum where all the bands play. This was pre-Moda Center, pre-Rose Garden. So that's where all the bands came through. And so I got gigs working for crowd management service, doing all sorts of things. One particularly not so fun concert, I was working in the bathroom stalls, making sure people weren't doing things they shouldn't be doing. Yes. And then one time I got asked after a show, the Van Halen show, to work extra overtime, and would I be willing to work down by the dressing rooms? And I said, of course I'll work down by the dressing rooms and get a chance to be within like 50 feet of Eddie Van Halen and Sammy Hagar at that point, and some of the others. And so out of nowhere, Eddie Van Halen came around the corner. It was just me and Eddie in the hallway, nobody else around. I was just kind of like, oh my gosh, my guitar hero is here. And I reached out and shook his hand, told him what a great show it was. And at that point, somebody kind of came out of nowhere, a deranged metalhead, if you will. And he really wanted an autograph from Van Halen. And I was supposed to be stopping this from happening, but Eddie was very gracious. And so the guy gave him a dollar bill to sign and a Sharpie to use with this. And Eddie kind of misdirected him a little bit and put the money in his pocket. And the guy's like, I want my money back. He's like, what are you talking about? I don't have your money. And eventually he gave up the money and signed the dollar bill and gave him his trophy. And that was when I met Edward Van Halen back in the day in 1986.
Another difficult question. You might want to take a second to think about it. Do you have one album that you would say, it might not even be one of the ones that you included, but like your favorite album, something you think is just perfect, or maybe something that, you know, that first album that you really became really familiar with?
That's a good question. So I'm taking this to be kind of like you're stuck on a desert island sort of a scenario, and you've got one album to listen to for the rest of your life. Oof, that is a tough one. The one that immediately comes to mind is by a 80s, early 90s alt-rock band. Some would call it a punk band, The Replacements, and their album, Pleased to Meet Me, which just kind of blew my mind when I was about 18 or 19 years old, and was a soundtrack to the next 4 or 5 years of my life through college, through the tail end of high school. And they just continue to inspire me during that period. And it's just, I don't know, the music that you listen to when you're that age, it imprints on you in a very unique way, more so than, yeah, exactly, your formative years. I mean, there's a reason why a lot of old people listen to the music they listened to when they were teenagers, because it's like chemically cemented into their brain. You never forget it, ever. And so that's one of those albums for me. Highly recommend if you're into that kind of stuff. There's a little bit of everything on the album.
The Replacements, what's it called again?
The Replacements, Pleased to Meet Me.
That's a pretty hard title, actually.
It's pretty funny. I've got a chance to meet them a couple of times and see them several times. One of my favorite bands of all time.
Did you used to collect vinyl back in the day?
Way back in the day, yes. Although my first music that I purchased with my own money was an 8-track cassette. I mean, I used to spend a lot of time in record stores, used record stores, you know, flipping through, trying to find CDs or cassettes or vinyl. And it was always a great thing when you could find something that was a rare gem that you knew everybody wanted and you were going to be the one who had it. I've always liked records, vinyl in particular, because of the aesthetic of that. The experience of listening to an album and opening it up and reading the liner notes, reading the lyrics.
I love liner notes.
All that stuff is just, I think, a way different experience. And if you're truly listening on vinyl, you have to listen generally. You don't have to, but it's much safer and easier to listen to it from 1 to 5 and then flip it over and do 6 through 10 or however many tracks there are on each side. I just think people are too spoiled with Spotify and the digital ease with which we can change the tracks we're listening to not really appreciate that thing that happens when you're sitting with a piece of vinyl and you have the album in front of you. You're looking at the cool poster that's in the inside of this and, you know, the tribute liner notes and all that stuff. But anyway.
We've kind of teased the listener here. So what we did for this episode, this special edition of Tea Time, is that Mr. Greene and I had a record swap. We both gave each other 5 of our records from our own personal collection. to have a couple days to listen to them and give our thoughts. So yours are already out of the bag, so I'll let you go first if you want.
Okay. Well, I'm going to butcher this, but this is one of the albums that Suki gave to me. Korush Yagmai, I believe, Back from the Brink. And how did you describe this? Like a Persian, psychedelic?
Some Persian psychedelic rock. Korosh Yagmai. He was kind of rising to stardom up until the revolution, and then he was forbidden to perform because of kind of his image and just the genre that he represented. But he chose to stay in the country instead of going to the West to pursue his career, because he wanted to, like, preserve the Persian music culture, I guess. And so he chose to stay in the country.
Well, I really enjoyed this. I think this was actually my favorite of the collection that you
Great
gave.
to hear. He was playing it when I walked into the room, as a matter of fact, so that's not a lie.
I think it's also going to be something. I sometimes play some background music, just kind of quiet.
Definitely.
Music in the background while people are studying or doing an assignment in class. I'm definitely going to be playing some of this in class, a little Persian psychedelic rock. But I really appreciated this piece.
Thank you. So the first album that Mr. Greene gave me was An Evening with Silk Sonic by Silk Sonic, Bruno Mars, and Anderson .Paak. This is kind of unique among these because it's the only one that I actually experienced. This is an album that Anderson .Paak being one of my favorite artists, and this is an album that I was looking forward to coming out before it even came out. But yeah, this is a fantastic album. It's exactly what you expect from it, and then it's just, there's really no bad songs. I think my favorite track, probably Fly As Me.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's definitely one, and you deserve to be with somebody as fly as you, Suki.
Oh, come on. But yeah, this is a match made in heaven. Beautiful album.
I dig that song, but I also like I'm Gonna Leave the Door Open.
Great one.
Which is a great kind of soulful play off of that 70s funk soul sort of a thing. But I love it. Mm-hmm. Very groovy.
Yes.
Cool. All right, Tribe Called Quest, Midnight Marauders. The album cover has like all these people, famous hip-hop people, by the way, wearing headphones. And
from De La Soul.
Oh, nice.
Right here.
There's Chuck D from Public Enemy. Thank you.
Sure.
I mean, there's a bunch of these people that you probably recognize here, but I really like Tribe Called Quest. I really like 90s rap, and so this one spoke to me on a kind of contextual level for the 1990s. I kind of discovered this after the fact, but I really like, is it Q-Tip? Is that guy? Yeah, okay. So he's an interesting personality in the rap world and has done a lot to bring notoriety and clarity to the world of rap. But anyway, I really like this album. Why did this speak to you?
It's about as perfect as a hip-hop album as you can really get for me. 14 tracks. Every track is amazing. Production from Q-Tip.
It's quite the...
great album.
Just so you know, we got about like 6 minutes. FYI.
Oh, yeah. I'll try to wrap it up. So Van Halen, we already brushed over this a little bit. And it's interesting you were talking about Eruption. When I came home, my stepdad, I told him all about this, and he got really excited when I pulled this one out. And he's like, "Listen to Eruption first." Yeah, amazing song. Definitely seems really hard to learn. The guitar on everything. Mr. Van Halen knows what he's doing with that guitar.
Definitely. By the way, just really quickly, see the Weezer logo represented in that?
I do
the
now.
Van Halen. I mean, this is the original nod. This album was a soundtrack to me back in the day. Next. What do we got? Knowledge by Hood Dreams, yes?
Hood Dreams by Knowledge.
Yeah, Hood Dreams by Knowledge. And so, honestly, I didn't get a chance to listen to this one, but why don't you tell me a little bit about this?
Yeah, here we have the only instrumental one. Knowledge, very prolific producer, probably my favorite producer of the past decade, mostly because of a team-up that he had with Anderson .Paak called Yes Log, their duo being called No Worries. And yeah, just all of his beats are very complex. They're so unique. And there's really not a single producer that sounds like Knowledge. And he also produced my favorite Kendrick Lamar song, Mama, on To Pimp a Butterfly.
Well, I may hang on to that one if you don't mind, so I can listen to that. And I do intend to listen to it. Cool. What do you got next?
What do we have? Ooh, we have Axis Bold as Love by Jimi Hendrix. Little Wing was a track that I already had liked in my songs. It's probably my favorite track. But yeah, the title track, Bold as Love, I keep saying track. I'm saying track, train track. If 6 Was 9, another great track.
Yeah. in that one song you mentioned, 6 Was 9, he does kind of like a rap at the end, like a stream of consciousness, talking. Another great track on this one, by the way, you got to open this up, check it out, is Castles Made of Sand. That was one of my favorite tracks.
Love that one.
Of all time.
And great art as well.
Great art, yeah. And that's another thing about albums. I mean, it's the aesthetic of the art is so cool. So, Quincy Jones, the dude. I have a huge respect for Quincy Jones. Do you guys know that he is the dad of Rashida Jones?
I did know.
It's from The Office and, I Love You Man and various other shows. But anyway, Quincy Jones is just like this monumental figure in the history of rock. As a producer, as a musician, as an executive, as an advocate. I mean, he's just done everything under the sun. There's some cool documentaries out there about him as well you should check out. But I really liked this album, and I respect him as an artist immensely. What do you like from this?
Basically everything you said. One of the most influential artists of our time. A producer for Michael Jackson's, I think it was second, Thriller and Off the Wall, two of his most famous albums. Just a masterful arranger, because he only played one instrument, but the way his musical knowledge surpassed that. And so he was able to find people and bring them together in a very successful way. I mean, a lot of albums sold. And the last thing about this one, very first vinyl record that I ever purchased.
Nice.
So a lot of personal significance at a little antique shop in Coos Bay.
Very cool. Why don't you pull one of mine, and then we'll be running out of time here in a couple of seconds.
This one, I was so ashamed that I had never heard it, because it's Purple Rain by Prince. Yeah, it's an amazing album. I mean, it's one of those albums for a reason. Every single track is good. And something I like in like when I watch The Goonies, Corey Feldman's character wears a shirt of this, and then you walk outside today and you still see a bunch of people wearing shirts of Prince, Purple Rain. And so it's a testament to how legendary of an artist he is and how timeless his work was.
Agreed. Great movie. If you haven't seen the movie, check it out. It's, again, just a snapshot in time, like 1983 to 84. A tribute to the Minneapolis scene that spawned all sorts of cool bands in the 80s and 90s. I mean, Prince is legendary in terms of his artistry, his ability to play, his production. I highly recommend Prince. Bridges, Gil Scott-Heron, Brian Jackson. I listened to one of these tracks. I can't remember which one, but I liked it. Tell me, why did you have this in your collection? That's kind of interesting.
This album is not on streaming services. This is one of the only ones that I purposely sought out online. Especially the track We Almost Lost Detroit is one of my favorite songs of all time. And in a similar way as Jimi Hendrix, Gil Scott-Heron was in many ways kind of like a precursor to rap, like a stepping stone from this jazz and soul and funk. He wasn't really defined by a single genre. It was a mix of all of them, and the stream of consciousness style that he brought was very influential on rap, especially his song "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised" from his album "Pieces of a Man."
I know that song.
Yeah. And then last one, not least, we saved the best for last, Weezer. So I listened to it, and it's really good. Like, I was expecting to dislike it. I am curious to hear your explanation for the significance behind it.
Well, about the time this album came out, there were like these really serious bands like Nirvana, the grunge, very socially conscious. And this was just good old-fashioned kind of fun rock and roll that was, having a blast playing rock music. It's a part of what we call the geek rock genre for, people who maybe don't look like the traditional rock star or aren't very, into whatever archetype you think is a part of rock and roll, but these guys are notably geek. I think Rivers Cuomo was actually a student like Harvard or something like that.
He was. I was looking at the Wikipedia and I thought why have I never heard this? That's insane.
Yeah, he kind of dropped out of Harvard to be a rock star. I mean,
Save the rock.
Get an English degree at Harvard, be a rock star. Which one do you choose?
He's done pretty well, I'm assuming.
Yeah, I think he's done all right for himself. But anyway, great album. Lots of cool tracks on that. Highly recommend if you've never checked that out. That is the quintessential blue album, as they call it.
Well, thank you so much. I loved having this discussion with you. Thank you so much for your time. Camasonian listener or viewer, tell me who you want to see on the next episode of Tea Time, who you want to see in the next video. That's about it. I think we've wrapped up here. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's
It was
been a
my
pleasure.
pleasure. Thank you.
Until next time.